Great. Well, that was a fantastic presentation. I'm from the Gulf Coast, so that was meaningful to me. Who all here wants to change the world? Yay! Woo! Well, I was actually reminded this week by Cheryl Heller, a very insightful board member of this organization, and also by a lot of the presentations this week, that it's not the world we need to change. It's the way we look at the world. And that's why we're here together, is that we're all coming with different, unique perspectives that we bring to this party. And it's fantastic to hear these different perspectives. I happen to have a very unique perspective from the top of a landfill. I spent 8 years working in the environmental services industry, the trash business. And I'm guessing most of you guys probably don't have that much information about what happens to your trash. It kind of leaves your curb, it's behind your office building, it's somewhere in the organization that you work for. But you probably don't think that much about it after it leaves your hands. And I actually got a real interesting, insightful view into what does happen to it. And the thing I learned the most in my experience there was the scale. The materials that we waste in the US, residential, commercial, and industrial, if you loaded them all up on trucks, it would take a convoy of trucks to wrap around the equator 600 times to fill up all that stuff. There's a saying in the waste business. When you come up to a landfill, you kind of smell that funky aroma, and you go, ah, the smell of money. But that's right, because those materials not only represent money you're spending to put those into a landfill, but they also represent the embedded carbon, energy, water, and other resources that go into those. Just as Ryan mentioned before, the extractive economy, this is where all of those resources go to die. So the current system, we recycle about 30% of the stuff. And it's the most ubiquitous things that we all think of as recyclable: plastics, cardboard, paper, metals. And that's not even a very terribly efficient market. The companies that buy that material are always concerned about quality not being quite up to par. The companies that sell the materials never really know if they're getting a fair price. So it's really a very inefficient market. And the biggest inefficiency of all is that it doesn't even touch 70% of the stuff. We've all been told, oh, that's not recyclable. Well, after hearing Ryan's presentation, I call bullshit on that. If you can turn poop into plastic, then the stuff that is in your dumpster probably has a little more value than you actually think it does. And that's what I set out to do when we founded RecycleMatch a year ago. RecycleMatch is a for-profit company. We match companies that have waste with companies that can use the materials productively. And we do it online. The idea is really similar to what eBay did when they first came out. If you can imagine, back then, the stuff that was in your grandma's attic probably wasn't worth very much. You'd throw it out at a garage sale, get a couple bucks for it. And then you found out that eBay, you could market this stuff on there. And you didn't know this, but there were hundreds of people that really wanted that junk. And it turns out there was a much higher market value for it than you ever expected. Well, the same thing that eBay is doing for garbage or for junk in your attic, RecycleMatch is doing for the waste in your dumpsters. Let me give you some examples to make it a little more real. We had a company that came to us with 90,000 pounds a week of food waste going into a landfill. We were able to connect them with a company that could make energy. Another company that had 3,000 windows coming off of a high-rise office building. And they were told they're not recyclable. We posted them on RecycleMatch and found another company that could crush that glass and turn it into countertops. Another company was receiving materials wrapped in foam sheets. Didn't need the foam sheets. Turns out another company in the same city did. So we were able to connect those two companies, and the other company didn't have to buy brand new foam sheets when they wrapped things to go out to consumers. Another company that manufactures polyester or paint rollers. They had polyester scraps left over, perfect to fill up fluff for seats. Another company that makes bags out of billboards. The examples can go on and on. The idea is that for every one of these supply chains that's interconnecting, that's waste that doesn't have to be extracted, resources that don't have to be extracted. We're essentially connecting and interconnecting all of these supply chains, making a more efficient business ecosystem, and making the data available so that people like Ryan can innovate and say, oh my gosh, I didn't know there was so much of that out there that I could now turn into something valuable. So 30%, that's not good enough. This system is broken, and it doesn't have to be this way. The EPA says that we can get to 70% recycled and diverted from landfills, and RecycleMatch feels like this is the best way to use technology to make that happen faster. So I'm really talking in particular to the companies in this room, companies who are trying to get to zero waste, companies who are thinking about sustainable sourcing. And if you could participate in this, if you could see that your waste is a resource and be one of the early adopters for RecycleMatch, not only would it help a small startup get to scale, but it would also help us achieve the network effect and this grander vision of a more efficient business ecosystem. So instead of seeing waste, think like a garbage man and think, the smell of money.